All right.
Welcome to Dynasty Playbook, Dynasty Fantasy Football Subreddit's dedicated podcast. I'm your host, Drew. You can find me on Reddit at EAF Marine and on Twitter at DrewDotson NFL. With me are my co-hosts, Scott and Tyler. You can find Scott on Reddit at Stewie35. You can find Tyler on Reddit at Barrels. And you can find him on Twitter at HBomb9508. So far, we're off to a just wonderful start. But we do have some exciting news. It's kind of the reason we're starting so late this week. One of our co-hosts had some exciting news. Scott graduated from college this week, so let's all congratulate him.
Party. Congrats,
Exciting.
dude. That's awesome.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
So, it's another week separated from the NFL draft, and another week closer to the season starting. There's a long, long time. By the way, I can hear myself in one of your reverbs. I'm getting an echo. So, we'll start off with our weekend review, and it's going to be pretty much just Ryan Tannehill got a brand new contract. He's the first one out of that class to get a sexy, almost $100 million contract. The Dolphins signed him on long term. It's got about $20 million guaranteed for this year. Bumps him up to about $25 million next year. And if he sticks on through March of 2016, it bumps up to about $40 million guaranteed. So this is pretty good news for the Tannehill fanboys. It's great news. I have Tannehill as high as my QB6 right now, so I'm all about it. For those of you who are drafting Devontae Parker right now, Jarvis Landry, Jordan Cameron, some of you Greg Jennings believers out there, I'm sure there's like one or two of you. You guys are excited.
Greg Jennings is still a thing? I didn't know that.
I mean, he's a thing. I don't know if you can call him a wide receiver anymore, but he's a thing.
He's still officially alive, though.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
You guys remember the rumors that kind of started banging around early? It was either like early in the preseason, early in the regular season. They were talking about giving Matt Moore some snaps, and do y'all seem to remember that when they were talking about we might be sending Tannehill to the bench? And I guess that was just coach speak, a motivational tool, whatever. But this contract is a really good deal because it just means that the Dolphins are believing in him, they're locking him in, and that should translate to security for your dynasty teams, especially those of you who have Tannehill as your QB1. I think you'd be pretty comfortable with that for the foreseeable future.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And no, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it was a smart move by the Dolphins. Strike before the rest of them, kind of set the market. Don't wait for someone else to get a big deal that you guys don't want to match. Tannehill has always been someone I had creeping up my ranks pretty quickly there, so I think this just locks him in even more. And if you had him maybe as a backup, or even if you already had him as a starter, he's going to be someone you can look to for a while.
Yep, I'm all about it, and I don't think there's a whole lot more to say about it. So I'm pretty excited. We're going to move on to our next segment, and this is going to be our first one ever. It's a recommendation from Adam, and it's going to be the IDP Spotlight, where we're going to pick just a random defensive player from out in the NFL universe. I haven't decided every week if we're going to pick an active NFL player. Maybe we'll pick LT one week, maybe, I don't know. And we're going to talk about his IDP value, whether we think he's undervalued, overvalued, how his prospects look for this year. If it's LT, he's not looking real good for IDP this year. But I'm pretty excited. I think it's going to add a little bit of depth to the show, and it's going to fill in some of that space that we lost with kind of losing our college prospect discussion. So this week we're going to start off with a guy that I've been a fan of for quite some time, and that's Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger. And I'll let you kick us off, Tyler.
Yeah, so Tyrann Mathieu right now is, in my opinion, being undervalued a little bit. He started off last year on the pup, and then he didn't play just a whole lot. And Arizona deployed that weird safety rotation with Jefferson and Johnson and Buchanan and Mathieu, and there might be any four of them out there at once. There might be two of them. It was just an odd assortment. But Mathieu, to me, is behind Buchanan for dynasty purposes, easily the second most desirable defensive back in that system because he's versatile. He can play safety. He can play slot corner. He's a playmaker. We saw him at LSU. I mean, the dude was a one-man gang in college. Tremendous athlete, great ball skills, and just a real difference maker. So right now, Mathieu, and I haven't looked at the consensus rankings, I'm going to bet you're going to find him somewhere in the 18 to 20-ish range for most rankers. I think I personally have him around DB 13 or 14, something like that. So right now is a good time to get him as like a throw-in on a deal. You know, if you're close to making a deal with somebody, you feel like you need a little bit more oomph, say, hey, man, throw in Tyrann Mathieu. And if you're dealing with a guy who's not the most savvy or who has a short memory, all he's going to remember was Tyrann Mathieu sat on my bench all last year, and when I did play him, he bombed. And it's a great time to strike while the iron's hot because the iron's smoking right now on the buy low value for him.
Yeah, I love Mathieu. I think that he's definitely being undervalued right now. I think Buchanan is definitely going to be the number one DB as far as Arizona goes, but easily above the other two guys, I have Mathieu. He's just got that raw athleticism. I love to see that in a player, especially on the defensive side of the ball, especially as a defensive back. I mean, that just you have all that room to roam. I could see him playing a role like a robber, kind of similar to what Cam Chancellor plays, but I mean, obviously, he's not going to have the authority or the hard hitting and that's going to scare people. I think he's just going to kind of hide in behind some people, maybe be able to get some picks and make some plays like that. Because I think his biggest thing is a playmaker. So if you're if you're in a league where it's tackle heavy for IDPs, I'm probably leaning away from Tyrann Mathieu. But if you got big play or interceptions are a big deal, I'm definitely leaning more towards him as one of my safeties that I'm taking a look at just because he's so low in value right now. Why not? I think he's got high upside, and the floor is just where everybody else's is.
Right in lockstep with you guys. And Tyler, I would have, when you were trying to take a guess at where his consensus value is, I would have said probably right around early 20s. So, and I think we're in agreement on where he's in for DB rankings. So I probably would have said right outside my DB1 tier. I'm a big fan of the guy. I think he's severely underrated, and especially in leagues that value big plays, fumble recoveries, interceptions. If you guys play in punt return leagues, I don't know if he's going to be playing returning punts for him this year, but we know he can sure as hell do it. He's a danger to take it to the house on any play. I mean, hell, even if you don't have punt return yardage, most of your leagues are going to give you the touchdown at least, and he's a danger to get you at least a touchdown or two a year, which, I mean, isn't negligible. Overall, though, he's definitely undervalued, and I would be doing my damnedest to pick him up if I can, especially if your DB core is kind of weak. It's a great way to shore it up, and I would not feel bad about sending him out as my DB2 every week.
Yeah, I'd have no bones putting him out there in my lineup. And if I'm in like a rebuild situation, I got no problem with him as my DB1. I mean, it wouldn't bother me a bit. You know, because we've beaten a dead horse on this that DB is replaceable. But the top-end defensive backs, it's not so easy to say that they are. And he has every bit of potential to be, you know, an upper-tier defensive back. And these are the kind of guys that I love on IDP, the guys that I can get for cheap that have a great chance at exceeding the cost of acquisition. And this is exactly the kind of guy that I like. I mean, the floor should be pretty good. It's going to rely more on snap count than anything, so we're just going to have to kind of see how Arizona chooses to deploy them this year. But the ceiling is very, very high. This is the kind of guy that can go out and get you 3 picks in a game and take one to the house. He can come off the corner and get you a sack fumble that's worth an ass load of points. He's just that kind of guy. Just a really exciting player, and the value is so sweet right now.
If he's available in your free agent pool right now, what kind of rookie pick would you want to spend on him? I mean, I know you wouldn't be one to take Landon Collins after him. You definitely take Landon Collins over him, but say standard 12 team, standard IDP scoring, kind of like what we use in the subreddit league or Theory Revolution league. Where do you think you'd be willing to take him?
In a 2 DB league, I'd probably be willing to take. I'd probably be looking. I would put Collins in there, probably about a late third in a 2 DB league. In a league like Revolution, where we're starting up to 4, I'd be willing to spend much more than that. I'd be willing to spend an early third on him. And you're right, I would take Collins over him just because I think Collins is going to have this insane high tackle floor. But I'd be perfectly cool giving up just random third rounder that I'm going to spend on a dart throw for Tyrann Mathieu.
Any different for you, Scott?
Nope. I'm right in line with both you guys.
Yep, third rounder for me as well. Because I feel like that third rounder is where you start falling off on the value. I think anything within the second rounder I'm not touching. I think Collins is barely in the second round for me, and Collins has got significantly more upside than Mathieu does, in my opinion. I think if Collins hits to his true potential, we could see him end up as the DB1, like number 1. As much as I love some of the DB1s, he could surpass them all. But I think we've ranted and raved about him. I mean, I love this guy, but we don't need to talk about him for an hour. But we're going to get to talk about some more IDP because our first question comes in from Alex Kimball. It says, this is mostly for you, Tyler. What's a good way to get into IDP? He's trying to get a grasp of his roster in the subreddit league, and it's all sorts of obtuse. So it's greater than a 90-degree angle.
Obtuse meaning difficult, confusing. No. We're going with the geometrical
greater than a 90-degree
stance
angle.
on this. We're going with the geometrical. This is what I always say, man. When you get into IDP, jump right in, both feet. Don't mess around. Just go for it. Don't get into one of these IDP light leagues where they're starting one defensive lineman and one linebacker and one defensive back, because that is just painful to me. I'd rather start a kicker, if I'm just being perfectly honest. Jump into a league like the sub league where we're rostering God knows how many guys, and we're starting a full roster on defense. As far as valuing the players on your roster, if you're unfamiliar, the best thing you can do, go to Dynasty League Football, go to Fake Pigskin, go to Under the Helmet, go to these sites, look at where the rankings are. And you're going to find that most of the rankings will be fairly similar. There are going to be guys that are higher on certain individuals. There are going to be guys that value big plays more. They're going to be guys that value youth more. But it gives you a pretty good picture of that. If you were to just take and just average them all together, you're going to end up with a solid set of rankings. Be aggressive. Don't be afraid to take that guy who doesn't have a starting role. Look for the guy who's behind Chad Greenway or behind a Thomas Davis, somebody like that. Somebody these guys are going to be leaving the NFL pretty soon, and don't be afraid to put that guy on your roster and just let him sit there and simmer for a year or two till he gets his opportunity. And in season, I preached it and preached it and preached it. Snap count, snap count, snap count. Monitor snap counts. If you see a guy's getting an uptick, and I talked about this a little bit on the UTH Primer podcast on Sunday night, is if you see a guy, okay, week 2 he takes 15% of the snaps, and then week 3 it's 40. Get that guy right then. When you see that snap count do that jump to 40, you can be pretty sure that it's going to increase and increase and increase. And that's a big thing for me in in-season management because nobody's got time to watch all the games. There are none of us that are. There are some of us that are scouts. But for the most part, you just need to monitor who's on the field because the guys that are on the field the most have the opportunity, and that produces points.
Yep, and if you're looking for those snap counts, easiest place to get them is on Football Outsiders. They've got them right there. There's a whole little section for snap counts, and it's going to update, and it's all right there. And speaking of finding those guys that are seemingly blocked for the starting job, that's how you find guys like Deion Buchanan, and that paid off dividends for you already. And as much as going and looking at rankings and trying to judge IDPs inside of their own position, trying to decide who's better than who, when you're trying to gain perspective on how they rank against offensive players or against other defensive positions, my best advice is get on Twitter, get on Reddit, get on the DLF forums, get on the UTH forums, get on wherever you got to get. Voxer, I don't know how many people use Voxer, but talk to people, ask questions, just poll people's opinions, because there are tons of guys on these media forums that will just chat and chat and chat with you and help you figure it out. They'll help you gain your perspective, because to them, another developed mind means their format of Dynasty becomes more, it grows more, which to them it just makes them happy. I know, doing the 2QB ADP, I don't make any money off of it, but them having another resource means Superflex and 2QB leagues get more attention, they grow, and I get to see more 2QB leagues. I get to see more discussion on it outside of me talking about it.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. And don't be afraid to approach these guys. I've only been on Twitter for just a very, very short time, but I quickly found out who are the IDP guys. I kind of buddied up to them like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Approach them with different scenarios. And these guys, they're great. They'll answer your questions. They love nothing more than to just talk. I mean, we all have a passion for the game. Nobody's out here. Nobody's going to be a millionaire on fantasy football unless you believe the bullshit DraftKings commercials.
In all fairness, we all watched Andrew Dinkenmeyer win $1 million on YouTube doing a GPP. So that's one of our own.
You got me on the technicality. But anyway, in a more general sense, nobody's getting rich on it. We do it because we love it, and we love to interact with other people that share a similar passion, and that's what it's all about. Was there anything in here about trade value? This was something that I was thinking of earlier today. When you start looking at IDPs and what are they worth on the trade market? What can I get for them? If their name isn't Luke Kuechly, Levante David, or J.J. Watt, you're not going to get what they're worth relative to your roster very often. I'm not going to pay it. I'm not going to expect somebody to pay it. It just doesn't work like that. So IDP, it's all about what are they worth to you on your roster, not what are they worth on the market. Because outside of a few elites, you're pretty much just looking at throw-ins to fill in a deal most of the time. In my experience, anyway, IDPs on the trade market just don't bring a lot.
No, really, in the trade market, the only way you're ever going to get any sort of good value is if you're packaging them, and then you might get closer to what their actual value is. But if you're trying to deal them straight up as the piece, you're not going to get anything close to what they're worth. And since Tyler and I sat here and had a nice conversation, I'm going to let Scott weigh in now.
Yeah, you guys pretty much hit it on the head there, but my basic thought would be, if you're not getting those guys that, like you were saying, Kuechly, J.J. Watt, Levante David, these guys that are going to be worth a lot on the trade value, wait and take the risks, man. Start going for those shots that you think might have a chance if someone got hurt or if a trade might have happened. Who thought that Buffalo wasn't going to have Kiko Alonso this season? If you had whoever was backing him up, bam, there you go. So, just don't be afraid. If you're not getting those top guys anyways, you might as well go and look for this long shot that you might have a chance of turning around into something real good.
Absolutely. Keenan Robinson's turned into borderline LB1, and that was Tyler and my favorite flyer last year. C.O. Moore was another one of my favorites, and he was quote-unquote blocked if any of you actually believed in Nick Roach, who is now a free agent, so that's just how good he was. But I mean, it seems like it's difficult to try and find these sleepers if you're not familiar with defense. But it doesn't take that much digging, especially if you're willing to ask people and you're willing to kind of dig a little bit, ask the questions. And if you're relatively polite and you're not just demanding of these guys, almost anybody is going to be willing to just give up their time and just pour out the information for you. But do we have anything else we wanna throw out on that one? All right. Well, let's move on to our next question. Comes from kind of our weekly contributor. It's S Woodman Roxu. Says, okay, he wants us to discuss the recency bias again regarding Jay Ajayi. He honestly feels there is a huge amount of recency bias with what happened in the draft and the knee issues that is dropping Ajayi into the third round behind lesser talents. It isn't like the scouting reports were wrong. He was basically top 5 across the board pre-draft. You don't drop 7 spots when you have a decent landing spot, solid starting talent, and may very well be a third down back from the get-go due to Miller's inadequacies in the passing game. First off, let me say, I don't know what leagues you're in where Jay Ajayi is falling all the way to the third, but if you guys have an open spot, I'm interested. Just saying. Also, I don't think Lamar Miller is really that inadequate in the passing game. I mean, he's no David Johnson. He's not Darren Sproles, but he gets the job done. He's not Andre Williams. He's not Alfred Morris. So Jay Ajayi is going to get work in the passing game for sure. And he's still the exact same talent that he was when we were evaluating him. But there is something to be said for where the NFL drafts a guy. It has to start being included in your evaluation. We say don't draft situation, and I believe that, and I'm going to get it tattooed on my chest. Talent over situation, all day, every day. But when they draft a player in the 5th round, that's the NFL making a statement about something. In this case, I can't discern whether it was based solely on his knee or whether they don't actually believe in his talent. But I'm only going to assume it has to do with his knee, which is going to shorten his career significantly if, his fall is any indication. I have no problem with drafting Ajayi in the 2nd round because while we have him, I still believe he's going to be one of the best running backs in the class. But we might only have him for 3 or 4 years. We might only have him until the end of his rookie contract. And I'm okay with that because I'd rather draft him at the end of the 2nd than a rookie running back who might not make it to the end of his rookie contract because he's going to get cut because he sucks. And so, to me, it's not so much recency bias, it's just we got new information. We got new information, and we had to reevaluate what information we already had. We had to go back to the table and start from scratch, essentially.
Yeah, I feel like Ajayi is definitely being, held back by where he went in the draft. And I agree with Drew. You got to kind of take that into consideration. Do we know why he fell so far in the draft? No, but I mean, they get paid to do what they're doing. I'm doing it for fun, so I'm definitely going to take that into my considerations. I will take these guys that I already had pretty close to Ajayi, and I'll move him behind those guys. They were already close. This happens. It's kind of going to hold him back from me. So, I mean, in my opinion, he does lose a little bit because of where he went in the draft. But like Drew was saying as well, I'm not seeing him go too late in the drafts that I'm in. I mean, the most recent one that I've done, I believe he went early 2nd, like the 3rd or the 4th pick in the 2nd round. So, I mean, right around that range, I think is about right, depending on how the board fell. And I think that you got to take everything into consideration when you're judging these guys. You can't just throw anything out. I mean, if he has bad numbers at the combine, you got to take that into consideration. If he's bad on tape, but he's good in the combine. You still got to take the bad on tape into consideration. And there's nothing you can just throw out. So I think when you just put it all together, he just ends up getting moved back from, being a top 3 running back to maybe a top 5 running back in his class. So I don't think he took a big hit, but I think just taking everything into consideration, and part of the reason that most people draft after the NFL draft is because they want to see where these guys land and where they land, not only to team-wise, but to what round they land in the NFL drafts.
Yeah, and for me, that's pretty spot on. I mean, almost across the board going into the draft, Jay Ajayi was everybody's number 3 behind Gurley and Gordon. I saw a few guys sneak Abdullah in there, and I saw a few guys sneak Duke Johnson in there. But he was widely regarded as the number 3 back in the class based upon talent. And then I suppose now confirmed rumor that he had the knee problems that they're worried about career longevity start popping out. And then he slides in the draft. But to me, all of this, I'm going to circle back to the fact that he was the number 3 back in the class prior to the draft. And when I'm looking at a running back, I'm very rarely going to be trying to project out past 3 or 4 years. I'm going to be turning running back over constantly. I mean, how many guys are really, truly successful for 4 or more years? It's a pretty short list, really. When you get to start really breaking down the names, there aren't a lot of guys at that position who have just this crazy longevity. The number 1 back in Dynasty right now is Le'Veon Bell, who has a year and a half under his belt, and he's been freaking dominant. But do we
and
really?
He wasn't even dominant in his first year.
Right. I mean, and you remember the T-Rich comparisons this time last year. Oh, Le'Veon only had 3.x yards per carry and this, that, and the other. And I can admit that I bought into that a little bit. But at the same time, I was getting Le'Veon in the mid-second of startups last year, which was pretty sweet, which I've since sold all my shares. But, for me, I'm still perfectly comfortable taking Ajayi. And I think where he's going to fall is right where Scott said, in that early to mid-second. I think if he's getting past 2.5, 2.6, then it's time to throw your hat in the ring and move up and get him, because that's where it's just excellent value. I took him at 201 in a rookie draft yesterday, which didn't sit really well on my palate, but I was taking what I thought was the most talented player at that spot by a pretty good margin. So if he's fallen to the 3rd, that's awesome. If you're in that league and you can get him at that price, that's fantastic. But I totally get why he's fallen further in rookie drafts than he was leading into the NFL draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And you speak about people having him locked in almost as a consensus number 3. There were guys that had him as their number 2 over Melvin Gordon. That there were people that legit believed in Ajayi's talent, and I think we were all kind of right there with him. And I still have Ajayi ranked fairly high. I have him as my number 6 now, but it's my 4 through 6 is packed so tight. It's there's almost no difference. If I've got a team where I'm competing right now and I need depth at running back, or I need a running back too, I could take Ajayi over David Johnson and not have a problem with it. Or if it's half-point PPR, I could take Jay Ajayi over Amir Abdullah, because I think Amir Abdullah is going to rely a little bit more on the receptions. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think Amir Abdullah is going to tear it up, but I think Ajayi has the potential to put up double-digit touchdowns in his first year, in his rookie year, just because I can't remember who said it. Just because the amount of Dynasty content I've kind of absorbed in the last couple weeks has been ridiculous, but the front office and the coaching in Miami has made every excuse to not run Lamar Miller in the red zone. They brought back Daniel Thomas multiple times, and that guy is such a bag of ass that no other team has signed him. They let him go. He goes and be a free agent. He goes and sits at home, and then Miami calls him back up a couple weeks. He's like, no, we need you again. Come back. And that's all that happens. No one ever, it's like, yeah, oh, they dropped Daniel Thomas. We got to go get some of that. Like, no, it's like, oh, they dropped Daniel Thomas. Oh, well, sucks for them. They had Daniel Thomas. But that tells me they're probably going to give Ajayi the ball in the red zone a significant amount. And he's a big boy. He's probably going to be able to push to that pile fairly well, especially with some decent coaching. Bill Lazor is not a bad offensive coach. I have a feeling he's going to do some work with Ajayi. If he puts up double-digit touchdowns in his first year, I wouldn't be shocked at all. But I think that's it. You guys have anything else we want to touch on with Ajayi? All right. So our next one is it's a little more personal for this guy. It's Devlin Storm. He is in a 12-team IDP PPR league with 35-man rosters, which, let me just throw that out there, seriously way too shallow rosters for IDP. Need some more roster spots. Tell your commish, more roster spots, please. Starting roster, 1 QB, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 1 tight end wide receiver flex, and 1 normal flex. And for IDP, it's 2 D-line, 3 linebacker, and 2 DB. His roster is weak at everything except QB. He's got the 106, and he projects it to be Devontae Parker. He's thinking that's going to be his best option. He's considering trading the 106 for something like the 2-1, the 2-5, and the 2-10. And his kind of follow-up comment to that is, I could envision a scenario where somebody like Funchess and David Johnson and Max Williams will end up on this team because of a move like that. This could possibly help me fill my depth issues. Would you recommend this? First off, with a 12-team IDP, I don't know that Funchess, David Johnson, and Max Williams, I don't think either 3 of them would fall to 210. But second of all, that seems like selling pretty short on the 106. But I'll let you guys chime in and tell me if you disagree.
As a general rule, I'm not a fan of moving down in rookie drafts. I've done it. I'll do it before. I've done it before, and I'll do it again. This would sit on my palate a lot better if that 201 were like the 109 or the 110, something like that. Just seems like the guy that wants to move up to 106 needs to pony up a little bit more, honestly. And I do get that. When you have a shitty team, you need as many pieces as possible. You need to throw as many darts as you possibly can, and this is kind of a means to that end. So I don't hate it, but I just don't think it's a move I could make. I think when that pick comes on the clock, you can get a better deal than that. I know you can get a better deal than that. You put that pick on the board, you let everybody in the league know it's on the board, and you let it sit there and simmer for 4 or 5, 6 hours and just field the offers, because everybody at this point in time just looks at it as the 106. Now, when that sucker comes on the clock and when Devontae Parker's there or Nelson Aguilar's there or TJ Yeldon's there and you got the guys in your league that just have a hard-on for these guys, they will pay what it takes to come get them. So a move like that, I'm not real comfortable making it really at any point. But I'm especially uncomfortable making it prior to that pick coming on the clock, if that makes any sense. And then trying to project those exact 3 guys into those spots, that's an even more risky proposition, because all it takes is 1 or 2 guys not going according to your plan, and it blows up in your face.
Yeah, I agree a lot. I think that I've been burned by trading down in the past. If you like Devontae Parker, I'd get him at 6. If you like somebody else a little bit more that you think a lot more people are down on, if you really like Jalen Strong like Tyler does, don't think you have to move back to the 201 or the 110 or the 112 to pick him there. Don't be afraid to get him at the 106. It's only a reach because other people don't like him as much. It doesn't mean he's actually a reach. If he goes off and explodes, I mean, who's going to be judging you because you picked him higher than they thought that he was going to be picked? He just, if he has a year like Kelvin Benjamin had last year when he was going, late first or early second in most drafts, I mean, no one's saying that you reached for Kelvin Benjamin after the season he had last year. So, I mean, for me, it's hard to move down, seeing as I've done that for that exact reason. Oh, I think I can get this guy a little bit later, and I can maybe pick up an extra pick for this year, or a real late one for next year or something. And it's not worth it. Go get that guy that you want. If you think he's worth a little bit less, suck it up and say that you like him enough to get him. I don't think there's any reason to keep waiting around.
And a lot of this is knowing your league's tendencies as well. If this is a league that you know the guys in your league and you know kind of what their player values are, you can afford to gamble a little bit more. Like Drew and I had a trade in a rookie draft a few months ago where I did trade down from 106 to I want to say like 109, and I picked up like the 202 or something like that. But I knew my league, or I thought I knew my league well enough that my target, who was Aguilar at 109, would make it there, and he did. And I'm glad he did. But had he not, I wouldn't have been happy. I wouldn't have been stoked with that at all. And then I pick up Funchess at like 201 or 202. So in essence, it worked out great for me. It worked out great for Drew. He got what he wanted. I got what I wanted. And it worked out okay. But that's also because, it's a league where I'm pretty familiar with the guys. They're familiar with me. We all share our thoughts. We're not just, trying to be coy and, secretive about our dynasty values. We're all buddies. So, we kick it around like that. But this particular deal, it just doesn't sit right with me. I mean, I could do like 201, 205, have him kick in a future first or something like that. And that would be the kind of price the guys will pay, on draft day. They will give up future firsts to come get somebody. And if I could get something like that, yeah, I'd take it. But as it sits right now on the surface, I just can't take that deal.
Honestly, if it comes down to it, I'd be willing to take the future first 2.5 and 2.10, depending on the team. Because if your team's fine at everything except QB, you can wait on using that first because you don't need Devontae Parker this year. If that first has a random chance of turning into, say, the 102, and you have a shot at Tyler Boyd or Ezekiel Elliott next year, you're going to be pretty stoked that you skipped on Devontae Parker. And I mean, I've seen it happen. I had a team I traded with last year in mid-draft. I picked up a future first from a team. I looked at his team and I'm thinking this guy's a lock for the playoffs. He had Adrian Peterson, somebody else, and he had like Doug Martin as RB3. I'm like, this guy's running backs are stacked. He had Andre Johnson, for wide receiver, and he played it. He played the older players, which. Hey, that's fine. He looked like he was ready to compete in playoffs. 103. Just anything can happen. There were guys in 2013 that were relying on Randall Cobb. They were hoping for Randall Cobb to break out, and then he goes down, and their whole season goes down the toilet. But I would be looking at picking up a future first or a later first for this year. Because there's going to be some legitimate targets in the later first. But whatever you do, you need to be picking up multiple chances at some extra pieces. Because if your roster is bare, you need to be taking as many shots as you can. And on the note of my trade with Tyler, it all worked out well, and you thought you knew players' tendencies, except you thought I'd actually draft Devin Funchess. So you took him, and you let me get Duke Johnson. So screwed up.
Yeah, but I'm pretty cool with that now because now I don't have to deal with the Cleveland triad or whatever, triad, just the damn convoluted mess in Cleveland. I'm glad I don't have Duke Johnson on my roster there. And Funchess is going to beast next year. I see a potential bet here with you, me, and Funchess.
I'm not exactly excited about Duke Johnson, honestly. Mostly because I own so many shares of Crowell. I have at least all the shares of Crowell. I mean, if you take away character concerns in last year's draft, he was my RB1, and if he would have been my RB2 in this year's draft with no character concerns. So I might be a little high on Crowell, just a little.
And now you're just a little salty on Crowell. You got
no, not salty. I'm just a salty person.
Yeah, you're just in general, just kind of mean, really.
Yeah, I'm a grump. That's okay. I'm a grumpopotamus.
You're in charge of our don't give a fuck department.
Zero fucks. But, we may have deviated a little bit, but, just a note to leave on with that one is, man, just get as many pieces or take a shot on the upside. Take a shot on Parker. Because if he hits, you can ship him off for, a 2016 first next year during the draft and a future first and, an upside player you like and stock your shelves that way. Because if Funchess hits, even if Funchess hits, I don't see him having the kind of value uptick that Parker could have. If Funchess hits, I see him being like Martavis Bryant value right now. Whereas if Parker hits, we're looking at J-Matt value right now. Do you guys disagree with that?
Nope.
I think that's spot on for me. And I own Kelvin Benjamin in one spot, and
I'm sorry,
I can't really get anything for him. He was solid for me last year. Kelvin and Mike, man, took me to the championship game where I was humbled by our buddy Alex, but they got me there.
Yeah. I mean, they were good last year. I see a huge regression coming from Kelvin Benjamin, especially bringing in Funchess, who does pretty much what Benjamin does, except he doesn't drop the ball as much. So I think Kelvin's gonna get muscled out a little bit, but I think we've rambled on a bit about that, huh?
As we are capable of doing.
Yeah. Prone might be the better word, because it's more than capable. We tend to do it.
We are prone to ramble.
All right, and our next question comes from our good buddy 14 Team Mocker. He's at 14 Team Mocker on Twitter, which if you guys are not following him on Twitter, you're doing it wrong. I mean, I probably followed him for close to a month before I ever knew he wrote about fantasy football. And if I never knew he wrote about fantasy football, he'd still be one of my favorite follows. He cracks me up all the time. But he wants us to talk about the league that Tyler and I are doing with him. We're doing a best ball dynasty startup. He wants us to kind of talk about why he sucks. He wants to talk about the trades a little bit, which Tyler and I aren't really going to do, because to me, draft pick trades aren't that interesting to talk about. There's not really much to get into with it, especially because you have to bring into consideration who's on the board, and it's a whole mess of I don't want to get into it. But for the hashtag BuckNasty26, Tyler, what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, it's pretty clear that we've got a few different schools of thought going on in this startup, and that's the main thing that jumps out at me. We've got 3 or 4 teams that are just going hardcore. We're going to win right now. We're going to go all out. We're going to get those vets, and we're going to go for the throat in years 1 and 2. And then you've got a few guys, the UTH guys, Drew, myself, Joey Magianis in the league, where we're going that little bit different approach where we're just not really going for the older guys. We want to take the upside youth. And then we got Pat, our buddy Pat, who's just gone hardcore UTH, man. I love it. He is just youth, trade down, pick up futures, all that. And then we've got a couple teams that are nice and balanced. Justin Eustis's team is beautifully balanced. It's a team that I like to call win now with an eye towards the future. And that's a really, really solid build. But overall, this draft has just been a complete ass-kicking for me. I feel like every pick I've made has been a reach or bad value anywhere outside of the first 3 or 4 rounds. It's just been tough. And this league's going to be tough as nails, but some really, really cool guys. I mean, Benton's in there. We've had a Voxer going for the last few days, and that's a blast. God knows how many hundreds of messages have been sent back and forth on that. But really, really cool league, and it's definitely interesting to see the different strategies play out.
Yeah, it has been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. I ended up picking at the 112 turn, and I got there, and everything I was interested in had already been picked clean. So I didn't really have a strategy going in, but I decided, you know what, this is going to be a fun league for me. So I went balls to the wall. I took Sammy Watkins and Brandon Cooks and just decided, F it. That just decided my whole draft strategy for the whole thing, and I just went with the highest upside I could take on every pick, and my team has no floor. Like, if the guys on my team fall, they're getting dropped from their rosters. It's not like if they fall, they're going to be wide receiver twos. No, it'll be bad. But I think it'll be interesting. And in best ball, that could play out extremely well for me. Or I'm going to be picking at the 101 for a while, which could also be fun.
Well, you'll be battling me for the 101 because my team is a dumpster fire. I kept trading down because I just didn't like anything there. And at some point in time, I'm like, I'm just not going to take Vincent Jackson. I'm just not. He's just not going to be on my roster. And so I don't want to reach for Trey McBride right there, so I just moved down. And then I look up, and I've got 3 tight ends and 2 quarterbacks, and it's just it's so bad. That tire fire is going to burn for years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just got my first quarterback. We're in the 15th round. I took Andy Dalton as my QB1. And, I mean, I got some flack for it, but, I mean, he's the Ginger Ninja. He's going to light it up. He was the QB4 in 2013. Yeah, I mean, he had like 3 single-digit weeks and still finished the QB4. That tells me he's going to have some really hot weeks. He's going to win me some games. So, yeah, I like it. I might be psychotic. I don't know. I probably am. But we'll move on from that because Scott doesn't care about what we're talking about. And we'll move on to our questions from @Jan Swanson, who, another great follow. This guy's on his game. And he wants to know Shaq Thompson's IDP value.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So first off, he had me rolling last night. He was trolling Larry King on Twitter, and it was some of the best stuff I've ever seen. I mean, it's like 11 o'clock, almost midnight. I'm trying to go to bed, and I pick up my phone, and I look at Twitter, and I go check out his timeline, and I'm literally dying. The funniest things ever. I mean, he is a fantastic follow. If you don't give a shit about fantasy football, follow Jan Swanson because he'll make you laugh. A lot like 14-Team Mocker, very similar. Shaq Thompson for me is, I forget who I compared him to a few weeks ago, but he's like this crazy athlete, fantastic athlete. He won the Paul Hornung Award last year in college football as the nation's most versatile player. Played some running back, played some safety, played some linebacker. His true NFL position is going to be weak side linebacker, and that looks pretty clear. His landing spot was fantastic in Carolina, where he gets to play alongside probably the league's best linebacker in Kuechly, and old man Thomas Davis gets to take him under his wing and show him the ropes.
Was it Levante David?
Levante David Light. That was it. That's how I referred Shaq Thompson, because you go watch Levante David play, and he's not this by-the-books play-through-a-straw linebacker. He's this crazy athlete that can run around blocks and make plays on the backside just by running a guy down. And I'm not comping him by any stretch of the imagination, but that's the type of player Shaq Thompson is. I think we're looking at an incredibly high ceiling with Shaq Thompson, but we also have a pretty decent chance at a bust with him. He's not big. He's not instinctual. Like I said, he blows assignments a lot, but he's going to be great in coverage. I love Shaq Thompson. I think I've got him as my fourth linebacker out of the rookies, and that's right about where I like him. I'm not real big on McKinney and Perryman and those guys because I think we're looking at 2-down linebackers with those guys. Shaq Thompson, if he hits, is going to be a 3-down linebacker.
Do you have him over or under Shane Ray? Or not Shane Ray. God. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that to you.
That was me.
What? No.
No, Vic Beasley. Sorry.
We talked about LT earlier. I have Shane Ray ranked below Lawrence Taylor. My God. I don't even know if I ranked Shane Ray. I think he is just IDP garbage.
He just wrote his name and threw it in a fire.
Now you're asking if I have him above or below Vic Beasley?
Mm-hmm.
I have him way above Vic Beasley.
All right.
Way above.
Oh, yeah, you hate upside. I forgot.
No, I don't hate upside. I like the off-ball backers. And Shaq Thompson's an off-ball backer. Vic Beasley is probably he's gonna be a Khalil Mack type, where he could get you some big weeks, but he could also lay some turds. He can get you 2 solos and an assist, and you go, shit, I should have just played Josh Maga or somebody that's going to get 6 tackles. I'm not advocating that, by the way, just throwing a name out there. But Shaq, I really like Shaq. I think Shaq, you're going to be able to get him 4th round, maybe later. And
Where would you be willing to
why
take him?
not? That's probably about where I'm willing to take him. I mean, I'm all about taking the upside shots on offense, but unless we're looking at a guy that's going to be safe, like Kendrick, Stephon Anthony, a guy like that, and even then, I'm not going to take them where they're going to go, which is going to be the 2nd round. There's still too much offensive talent. But if I can get my hands on Shaq in the 4th round, I'm all about it.
Yeah, I definitely like what you had to say there for the most part. I think he's going to be pretty good. I think I'm really happy with where he landed as far as seeing what he's going to do in the future. I was a little bit worried about that, but then they got obviously Kuechly and Davis, which is going to make him have to figure out a new spot. But like Tyler was saying, he's very athletic. He apparently won an award for being one of the most versatile players in college football. So, and that just speaks to his talent, to his athleticism. And if any teams ever used just a bunch of athletic linebackers and made it work, it was Denver. And so I'm definitely a fan of that, being a fan of Denver. I'm a fan of just using athletic linebackers, letting them get out in space a little bit, letting them make some plays. And I could see him doing something like that for Carolina. But, yeah, I'm probably not drafting him too high, probably the 5th round or so before I even look for Shaq Thompson there. Like Tyler said, lots of offensive talent, and there's still 1 or 2 guys I like in the 4th round, so I'm probably not taking him until after that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Scott. He's not even on my radar until about the 5th round because I even Paul Dawson's been falling to the 4th round. So if I'm not looking at Dawson till the 4th, I'm probably not looking at Shaq till the 5th. And a lot of the offensive talent I've been liking is falling to the 4th. I would easily take Clive Walford over him in the 4th. And I thought Clive Walford was going to be a lock for the 3rd, but he's been consistently falling. But I like Shaq Thompson a lot, and I think he's going to get every chance possible to succeed. He's got some draft pedigree. He was a 2nd-round pick. And I think he's going to get to learn from somebody it's just perfect. I was so stoked when they had Thomas Davis announce that pick. Thomas Davis was Shaq Thompson 10 years ago. That's the perfect mentor for him. He landed in the perfect spot to succeed if he's going to succeed. So I'm not terribly concerned about him busting, but like Tyler said, I'm not a big fan of investing in IDP when I can invest in offense, just because it's easier to find the steals on defense. It's easier to watch the snap count and find the guys who are gonna sneak up on your roster. Whereas offense, it's a lot more cut and dry, and there's a lot more guys that know what's going on with it.
That's a lot of what it boils down to. Is your league mates are likely to be just as sharp as you on offense. They're going to be your peers more often than not. On defense is where you can gain an edge. So for me, rather than spend that early 2nd rounder on Kendricks and then spend a 4th rounder on Buck Allen, I'd rather spend that 2nd rounder on David Johnson and then a 4th rounder on Shaq Thompson or Paul Dawson. That's a much better pairing for me. You're mitigating your risk, and you're also, your floor should be similar and your ceiling should be similar as far as all that goes. So, overall, this linebacker class isn't my favorite. So a lot of these guys kind of in a bubble this year. Things are a little bit different than they were last year and what they'll likely be next year, because Miles Jack is coming, and I'm going to get super excited about Miles Jack. I can already see it happening. It's coming. But for me, I'm all about taking a shot at a guy like that over just a total random flyer. I'd much rather have Shaq Thompson than Zach Zinner. Shaq Thompson's got a much better spot of sticking on a roster and being fantasy relevant. But I'm not about taking, Eric Kendricks over David Johnson or something like that. So if that makes any sense at all, that's kind of where I attack a rookie draft in IDP.
Absolutely. And let's go ahead and move on to his second question, and it says, is the Josh Hill hype legit? And I'm going to go ahead and lay down my black and gold flag and say it absolutely is. I had Josh Hill rostered already in my leagues before I wrote him off. I don't even remember his name anymore. He's not on my team. Don't care. Before Jimmy Graham was ever traded, his talent's pretty legit. He's going to get a lot of work, and we didn't draft a pass catcher. I mean, the closest thing we did was we picked up C.J. Spiller, who not really going to steal a lot of tight end snaps or a lot of tight end targets. They're going to have to throw it to somebody. Colston is getting older by the minute, and his body is just falling apart. I love me some Marcus Colston, but he is not the wide receiver he used to be. Somebody's going to need to pick up the slack, and I think it's going to be Josh Hill and Nick Toon, because Cooks is not going to have enough extra to pick up the slack because he's already going to have 200 targets alone for him to deal with. So Josh Hill is absolutely legit, and if he finishes as a tight end 1, I'm not going to be surprised in the least. I'm not expecting Jimmy Graham numbers, but mid tight end 1 numbers would not be surprising.
Yeah, that's my whole deal with Josh Hill. Sure, why not? You know, the opportunity's certainly there. The situation is fantastic, so why not? I'm not going to go breaking my neck and spending some, ridiculous capital on him. But if I can get him on my roster for an acceptable price, yeah, I'll take a run at it for sure. If you have a rookie free agent draft, where your rook draft includes the free agents, where if it doesn't, come on, man. I hate the drafts that are just rookies. If there are vets that are out there and, they're worth being on a roster, let's put them in the rookie draft too. But, yeah, I wouldn't have any problem taking a run at Josh Hill. I wouldn't take him over Clive Walford, but I would damn sure take him over Jesse James.
I'd take him over Walford.
Of course you would.
Easily.
Homer.
That, and you don't have to wait on the development.
That's true. And Josh Hill looked pretty good last year a few times. If you had Josh Hill in a best ball league last year, you got a few playable weeks out of him.
Damn right.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm buying into the hype necessarily, but I'm buying into him being a viable play for sure.
Yeah, pretty much right there with you guys. I think I guess I'm more towards Tyler's side than the Saints homer over there. I just think he's in there with all the other guys that are still developing. Comes to mind ASJ, Eric Ebron, Jason Mara. I mean, I have him underneath those guys, but he isn't far behind. He's just the tight ends, unless they're at the top, it's kind of a mess down there, man. You don't know what exactly you're going to get out of these guys. You're not sure if you're going to have big games. You have a tight end that gets 2 touchdowns one game and then catches 2 passes for 8 yards the next. So I don't think tight ends are exactly the greatest way to be just looking for depth guys. So I mean, if he's going cheap, yeah, go ahead and take a shot at him. But like Tyler said, I'm not going to go out there breaking my neck trying to figure out how to make a deal to get this guy.
Yeah, I agree. I would rather try and get him as a throw-in on a deal, but I don't know where people are even valuing him anymore. So because I stopped trying to buy him after the whole Jimmy Graham thing, because I'm just the price is going to be ridiculous probably.
Yeah,
but
for me, at the end of the day, it's just another tight end, man. It's not Gronk. It's not Graham. It's just another tight end.
That's right. If it's not ASJ or Eifert, I'm probably not going to stick my neck out there and try and buy him. Because I like Josh Hill, but I am not married to my belief in their talent like I am with Eifert and ASJ. But let's finish up with his last question. And it says, who are our favorite late 3rd, early 4th round rookie targets? And Scott, I'll let you start us off.
All right. I like a guy that you guys both don't really like, and Jeremy Langford right around that range. If he falls as far as that, Landon Collins is always a very good pick at that spot to me. Trey McBride, if you're willing to take him that early, I feel like he's in that range as well. I wouldn't know because I don't let him fall far enough, but I think Stephon Diggs might fall that far in some drafts. Not sure. I've been picking him too early. But some guys like that is pretty much like my top 3 or 4 guys that I would like in that range.
Yeah, I literally have no idea what Stephon Diggs' ADP actually should be, because according to all my drafts, he goes in the late second because I've drafted him in the late second in every league I'm in. I mean, for all I know, he's worth like an early fourth, and I could be waiting, but oops, maybe. I don't know. But if you can get Diggs in the late third, then Diggs is my favorite late third round target. Otherwise, I'm a big fan of DeAndre Smelter if he's there. Darren Waller is a big target of mine for IDP. Like I said, Paul. Help me, Tyler. I've talked too much. My brain's gone.
Clive Walford, probably the name you're looking for there. No.
Linebacker.
Oh, Paul Dawson, my homeboy.
Dawson. I kept thinking Walson. I'm like, that's not a name. Paul Dawson. I'm looking at him in the early fourth. Yeah, I feel dumb now. I've seen Dante Fowler start to fall. If you can get him in the late third, that's a slam dunk every time. Who are some other guys that I'm digging on?
We about picked to clean. Of course, the Dynasty Playbook's #1 boyfriend, Stephon Diggs, leads the list here. Now, I had a draft today.
He had a draft today, and then his dogs interrupted it. Well, we'll let Tyler resume fixing his chaos. But who are some other good third round targets? Let's see. I hate Buck Allen. I hate everyone. I don't know.
Clive Walford has even fallen that far.
Well, I mean, I feel like we already hit on Clive Walford fairly well. But what happened in your draft earlier, Tyler?
Anyway, excuse me. All right, so today I have 308 and 408. 308's Dante Fowler, 408's Stephon Diggs. So
you're the
and I don't know if that's indicative of what it's going to be, but I know I was pretty stoked with that, and I think that's probably pretty close to relative value. There aren't a lot of running backs in that range that I like. I like Carlos Williams better than you guys. I got no problem with Carlos Williams right there. The situation's super screwy in Buffalo, but God knows they don't like Bryce Brown. And Fred Jackson is 140 years old. So I kind of like Carlos Williams as a nice later round pick as well.
That's a little higher than I'd take him, but I don't hate Carlos Williams as much as you might think. I also like Zach Zenner as like an early fourth pick because I like Zach Zenner anywhere I can get him in a draft. I heart Zach Zenner.
Yeah, Zach Zenner's the dynasty darling right now.
He's my dynasty darling. But I feel like that hits that one up pretty good. Let's move on to a question from a person who's near and dear to one of our hearts. This comes from B-Hug, Brady Huggins, who may or may not be related to one of my co-hosts. Says, underwhelming, cheap, third-year wide receiver, most likely to be a wide receiver 3 or 4 in 2015. And his options are Robert Woods, Justin Hunter, Cordarrelle Patterson, Marlon Brown, Aaron Dobson, etc. I don't know who etc. is, but
Marcus Wheaton.
This is pretty much Marcus Wheaton. This is pretty much a list of players I have invested in, and they have disappointed and made me sad. I think we can throw Stephen Hill on this list too.
Where's Greg Little? Where's Greg Little?
It doesn't. I think Tavon Austin fits on this list too. Huh?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna light my fire here for my hot take and say it's gonna be Aaron Dobson. And I don't think it's close. And don't make that face at me, Tyler. I think the biggest reason for that is look at every other wide receiver on that list, and every other single wide receiver had their team draft a new wide receiver into them to play ahead of them. Except for Woods. Woods had Percy Harvin brought in. Hunter now has to compete with Trey McBride and DGB. Cordarrelle Patterson has to fight with Mike Wallace and the god Stephon Diggs. Marlon Brown has to fight with everybody. Didn't the Baltimore Ravens just draft everybody? And then they've got Kamar Aiken, and they've still got Michael Campanaro. And I just That's not happening. Tavon Austin sucks, and Marcus Wheaton sucks, and he's got to fight with Sammy Coates and Martavis Bryant. So to me, it's just Dobson based on opportunity. And his failure is the most unclear because it could potentially be due to injury. Shoot me. Shoot me if you think I'm still crazy, but at least I have a legitimate reason, and I'm not just like, it's going to be Aaron Dobson because I love Aaron Dobson.
No, you're legit there. And God knows what happened with Aaron Dobson last year. I mean, what the hell happened out there? I mean, is Brandon LaFell really a world beater? Who knows what Belichick's doing? Dude, if I can get away from the Patriots outside of Gronk and Brady, I'm doing it. I mean, I'll take a little cheap run at Tyler Gaffney or somebody like that, but I just don't want anything to do with that mess. The one I listed as most likely, and I don't believe that it's going to happen, is Cordero. Cordero still has all the raw skills. He's such a good athlete. He's just such a bad receiver. But I'm still buying Cordero on the cheap. And last year he was a, second or third round startup pick? Thank God I missed on that. I got him a couple times a little bit later than that, but it still was just a bad investment. But now if I can get Cordero in the 13th, 14th, 17th, something like that, sure, why not? I'll take a run at him. I had him thrown in on the back end of a deal the other day just as a little bit of juice. So that'd be the guy I would see would most likely to break out. Marlon Brown is another guy. He's massive, absolutely massive, and he had a pretty damn good rookie year. If you look at his rookie year comps versus Martavis Bryant's rookie year comps, they're almost identical. Now, granted, Martavis played more, or not, Marlon Brown played more, but the rookie numbers were strikingly similar. And he's got to be, and he's competing. Yeah, he has a lot of competition, but he doesn't. It's not like he's competing with Jerry Rice out there. I mean, it's Waller and Campanaro and Aiken and old ass Steve Smith. So I could see Marlon Brown getting some relevancy in the red zone. I think I'm about ready to completely stick a fork in Justin Hunter. It's done. It's over. At least in Tennessee. He's got all the raw skills too, but they're just not as good. You know, and that is one I bought into hook, line, and sinker last year. I got Justin Hunter absolutely freaking everywhere. But Dobson could do it. Who the hell knows? Dobson could go for 1,500 yards next year. Who knows? I mean, Jonas Gray ran for 9 touchdowns one week. You just don't know what New England's going to do. You just don't know.
I guess I'm kind of close to Tyler there and thinking C-Pat's my top guy. Talent's just way better than the rest of them. Don't really think it's going to happen, but I think he has the highest chance. He is the most likely one to be a wide receiver 3 or 4. Then I have Brown and Hunter as my next 2 guys. I think they're both pretty talented, but once again, not expecting them to actually make that stride. I'm not sure what it is that they don't have, but it just seems like they're not meant to be top-end wide receivers at all. So those are pretty disappointing. Like Tyler, I was really into Hunter last season. Didn't really work out too well for me. Luckily, I was into Kendall Wright as well, so I kind of split both of those, and hopefully Wright continues to get a little bit better, although he has been pretty underwhelming as well. And then Dobson and Woods. I never really liked Robert Woods coming out of college, USC. Everyone was really hyped on him. I thought it was a little bit overhyped. And Dobson, I'm just so afraid of anybody that plays for the Patriots at running back and wide receiver. Seems like Tom Brady can do it with anybody out there, so why would they stick with any one guy? Keep the defense guessing, keep new faces out there. They don't know who to target, who to even look to as the go-to guy besides obviously Gronk, and it doesn't seem like anything anything a defense can do can stop that anyway. So, yeah, I don't trust either of those two to do much of anything. So C-Pat's definitely my top guy.
Yeah, I had C-Pat as my number 2 just because, the upside is still there. If he can by some miracle figure it out, and I was definitely believing in him. And I'm gonna throw a little bit more wood onto my Dobson thing. He probably spent a decent amount of time on the backup squad, working with Jimmy Garoppolo. So maybe those first few games, he gets in there, lights it up just because of the familiarity. Then he earns the starting role, gets in there with some Brady, 1,500 yard, yeah.
It's not out of the realm of possibility, man. I mean, it's really not. It's just, damn, it gets murky out there.
Oh yeah.
And especially, you just don't know what to do. Now, Dobson and best ball, I'm all about it. Yeah, I'll take a 20th rounder on Dobson and best ball. But if I've got to pick, where can you get him? I mean, where would you draft him? What's his freaking ADP? 900? I don't freaking know.
I don't know. He's right in the end of my top 200 for 2 QB startup, and I imagine his ADP is lower than that because I'm fairly high on him still.
That sounds about right, but so the whole situation just scares me. I'm not going to say he's on my avoid list, but he's kind of on my avoid list. And Bobby Woods, God. Man, Bobby Woods was so good as a junior at USC. He was dominant. And I just kept going back to that and kept going back to that. And it just hasn't turned into anything, and I'm not expecting it to turn into anything. I've dropped him on a couple rosters at this point, just outright dropped him.
Yeah, Buffalo made their statement about him when they brought in Percy Harvin and Charles Clay. Charles Clay isn't even good, and they spent an ass load on him to bring him in. And I feel like the new regime made their statement about what they think Robert Woods is. And I loved Robert Woods. I always thought Robert Woods was the better talent than Marquise Lee, and I don't think he got enough respect for it. And as for Justin Hunter, I loved Justin Hunter as a prospect. I was super hyped about him. He was one of those guys that, I don't think I loved him as much as Stephon Diggs, but I was hoping to get him where I could. I mean, I wasn't in many leagues back then, but he was definitely one of my guys. So, I've been crying my way all the way to the shower ever since.
Now, this whole list is I've owned a piece of every single one of these guys in several spots. So
yeah,
this list here just kind of boils it down to what an inexact science all of this is.
That or where you and I are just really bad at picking wide receivers.
I don't know if it's even that, but I don't do anything half-ass. If I'm going to go get a guy, I'm going to go get like 9 shares of a guy. And Michael, that way when they all – yeah, that way – oh, God. That way when they all bust, all of my teams can feel the pain. Why spread the risk? Just push all the chips in the middle and go Justin Hunter fuck crazy, and just get yourself in just a heap of trouble.
Brandon Cooks. I think there was at one point last offseason where I owned Brandon Cooks on just short of – if you subtract the charity league, I owned Brandon Cooks on literally every dynasty roster I had. 14 teams.
When they hit, it is a beautiful thing, though. Like me with J-Matt and A-Rob and to a little bit lesser extent Mike Evans. I was buying those guys up and buying and gambling and taking them earlier. And granted, A-Rob hadn't hit and J-Matt hadn't hit, but their value is hit. Now, their value on the market is primo right now. But I'm still holding them. I want them on my roster.
And that's how I was with Alshon as rookie. I think I had like all of 3 shares of him, but I think that was all my leagues at that point.
Yeah, things have changed since then, have they not?
Oh yeah, I caught the bug quick, but it also helps that I have like spare income now that I can just throw league dues at.
Like 25 here, 35 there. Or somebody
making
says,
it rain.
Everybody says, "Hey, you want to join the league?" You're like, "No, not really." Yes.
I can't help myself. It's just horrible. But that went off the rails fairly quickly. Let's move on to our next question, just you and me, because either Scott's computer died or he got sick of listening to us talk, and I'm surprised we still have people watching us now because I'm getting sick of hearing us talk.
Yeah, we're pretty brutal tonight.
Yeah. It's this question's coming from it's another one from Alex at Kimball87, and he says he wants to talk about how riot drafts are the best types of drafts hashtag MPP. Now, the story behind this is Tyler, Scott, and I are all in the league called Dynasty is a Hell of a Drug. And this is the league where we drafted before the NFL draft. The reason this happened is, it was just one day, and one guy started talking about, I want to draft. And he started getting a little more excited about it. He's like, I want to draft. And he got another person to start talking about it with him. He's like, yeah, we should draft. And it slowly started exploding. To the entire chat is just, let's draft. People are drawing pitchfork emojis and just lighting my chat on fire. And I'm the commissioner, and I'm just like, this is not going to end well. And I'm like, there's a couple of guys who hadn't logged into the league in a couple of days. I'm like, I can't just start the draft and just throw this on everybody. And it's the first year of this league. It's guys we're all fairly close with. So I figured, it's an idea we could be open to. And so I talked about it with them, and we've done some fun things with the league. So to me, I wasn't totally opposed to it. But at the same time, I was like, should I let them just riot into doing whatever they want? And eventually I thought back to the French Revolution. I'm like, either my head's going to end up on a stake or peaceful revolution. Choices. And so riot drafts are definitely not the best types of drafts. I like it when everybody knows ahead of time what time the draft starts. Everybody can show up. Everybody's like, it starts at 4 o'clock in a week. And we show up at 4 o'clock in a week. Instead, with riot drafts, 11 people know about it because we started a week early. Like, he did it again in the league after the NFL draft. He's like, well, we want to start a week early. And then everybody but one guy knows about it. And then we can't find the 12th guy, and we're just stuck. And then everybody's rioting because no one's picking. And it's anarchy. I don't like anarchy.
I love riot drafts in leagues that you're running.
Yeah, because you don't have to deal with it.
No,
you get to fan the flames.
I just join the mob, man. I grab my torch and my pitchfork and just join the mob. I love the riot draft. The best part of the riot draft was the poll. And Dynasty is Hell, we put up the most ridiculous polls. There's a poll out constantly, and it's awesome. But the poll that comes out, when should we draft? And answer A was literally right now, and answer B didn't exist. So there was either you answered literally right now or you didn't answer the poll. And I thought that was just the best thing ever. So, Alex, you have my hammer.
Yeah. Tyler, I just want you to remember, hashtag don't be a butthole.
Hashtag don't be a butthole. And then hashtag MPP. That's my little brother Brady. MPP. If you see the hashtag MPP, we got to get this thing trending while all these drafts are moving just slow as molasses. It's more picks, please. Brady did that during a startup we had a few months ago. And we'd hit these 5 or 6 hour lulls, and he'd just pop in out of nowhere. More picks, please. Move it along, people. Get your damn picks in.
It's not that hard. If you don't want to pick, pre-draft. And I've been guilty of it. I've been guilty of holding up a draft because I didn't realize I was on the clock. And especially right now, I get it. Like, your notifications are messed up. All our notifications are messed up. I haven't gotten an email from MFL in 4 days. But if you log on and don't make a pick, I'll kill you. I will come to your house and I will murder you. Log in and make your pick.
Yeah, bailing while on the clock. Man, that's like the least cool thing you can do. That is the worst. When you log in and see that it's your turn to draft and then you just split for God knows how long, it makes me want to stab stuff. More picks, please.
Stuff.
More picks, please.
My rant went a little early this week. But our next question comes from @Adon Davenport, who this guy is killing it with the 2QB content. If you guys do Superflex, 2QB, anything, follow him. He's a fellow writer up at the Fake Pigskin. He's putting out solid content. Give him a follow. And he wants to talk about if we were surprised that Garrett Grayson made it back to 303 in the Groundhog League we're in, or if we felt it was a stretch. Tyler and I are doing a complete rebuild on a league we just adopted. We've got jack shit at quarterback except for Tony Romo. I think our number 2 is Brian Hoyer. So we took Garrett Grayson at 303. And I don't feel like it was a reach at all. I think Garrett Grayson in a 2 QB league is fairly solid value.
Yeah, and especially within the context of our team. And we did a dispersal for this draft, and the talent pool wasn't great. All right, it was A.J. Green, Jordy Nelson.
And shit.
And Peyton Manning, but a shitload of picks. And Drew and I just went pick. And we drafted Lamar Miller at some point and immediately traded him for more picks. So the initial plan is, yes, we know this is a 2 QB league. Yeah, we know we got to load up on quarterbacks, but this team isn't going anywhere soon. So we sat at the top of the draft and we went Coop. We went Amari Cooper, and then we took Gurley at the 102, and then we ended up trading that for more picks, in which we got Kevin White, Nelson Aguilar, and the draft has gone pretty well for us. But Garrett Grayson at 303 was just an absolute slam dunk. We had 3 names on our board right there. We got all 3 of them, walked away super happy. I was a little bit surprised that he was still there, but I also get why he was still there, because this league has fairly shallow rosters, especially for a 2 QB league. I think there's a total of 270 players rostered, something like that. So it's pretty small. And keeping a guy like that on your roster for several years can be pretty tricky. So I do understand why he slid that far. But for us, it was the definition of a no-brainer.
Yeah. And speaking of Aguilar, where we got him, we chatted back and forth about it on Voxer a good bit. And the guys on the board that went the top 4 picks were Gurley, Cooper, Winston, Cooper. So Kevin White was sitting on the board at 105, and Nelson Aguilar sitting on the board at 106, and Devontae Parker was also there. Now, Tyler and I had the 101 and the 102. We took Cooper and Gurley. We ended up trading Gurley for the 105 and the 106. And just because, with a roster as bare as we had, you guys need as much ammo as you got. And Kevin White, no brainer. But we debated on it. It's like Parker feels like what you should do. And we started talking about it. It's like Aguilar's been our guy for forever, because we co-own this team together. And we felt like maybe we're just being contrarian, taking Aguilar over Parker. But all in all, Aguilar was our number 3. So punched it in 106, Aguilar over Parker. And so at least you guys know when we're giving you advice, we stick to our guns. We take the advice we're giving out. We really believe in what we're saying, and we're willing to whip it out and put it on the table. Even if you guys think we're crazy, at least we're living the crazy.
Living the crazy. I love it. That's perfect. Yeah, and we did debate on it, and I've had Aguilar over Parker for this entire process. Drew's been the same. We've been Aguilar over Parker for, I don't remember any point in time where it even was a question. Granted, it's close and it's gotten closer, but it's kind of one of those things, man. You die by your own sword. Either that or Aguilar's just going to go boom. And I think he is. I really do. And that's not a knock on Devontae Parker, who I've warmed to considerably. But going Aguilar there is just saying, hey, we're going to go with our read here. This is our read, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. So we ended up walking away with that draft with our top 3 wide receivers. And we also snagged TJ Yeldon and David Johnson. So pretty friggin' stoked.
And some guy named Jalen Strong, who I kind of like.
Oh, yeah. We did get some Jalen Strong in that draft, too.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, I'm going to say we stroked that draft, man. We knocked it out of the park. We got the guys we wanted anyway. Whether we got the right guys or the best value, I don't really care. We got our guys, so I think we can hang our hat on that. I'm pretty pleased with the way it went, and big shout out to Josh Lake for having us. It's a really cool league, and he's been an excellent commissioner, and we're really excited for it because it's fun for us to do. It's the first time we've ever co-owned a team. It's pretty neat, man.
It is. It's a lot of fun. And with that, we're going to move on to our last question for the night. So for those of you listening, you finally get to stop listening here pretty soon. And this one comes from Lucifer X88. It says, how confident would you feel having the Eagles QBs, Bradford and Sanchez, as a QB2 in a 2 QB league? Well, first of all, if you're not locking down Tebow to get the Trinity, you're messing up. Got to get some Tebow because that's going to be your QB1.
Yeah, there's no reason to not have Tebow. Even if you don't have Bradford and Sanchez, why would you not have Tebow?
I mean, it's Tebow time. But in all seriousness, I wouldn't feel bad about having Bradford or Sanchez as my QB2 in a 2 QB league at all. I'm looking at my 2 QB rankings right now, and I have Bradford as my 23rd overall, so he fits right in with my 2 QBs. I mean, as a QB2, and you tie Sanchez in there as insurance, and I'm all about that. That probably bumps you up at least into QB 20, QB 18 range, especially in the short term. It gains a little bit more value because I value the younger guys in my 2 QB rankings a little bit higher, just because in a 2 QB startup, that young QBs, you're never going to get them cheaper than that. So I'm all about snagging them up. But I would not have a problem with Bradford and Sanchez as my QB2 in a 2 QB. But I also trounced our boy Tyler here in a Superflex championship with who was my QB2? Do you remember?
No.
Was it Kyle Orton? I think it was Kyle Orton.
Yeah, it was Kyle Orton.
So I guess I'm more of a proponent of punting on my second QB in a super flex or a 2 QB than Tyler is. And so I'll let Tyler finish us out.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be in love with the idea, but in 2 QB leagues, man, it's freaking tough to have that, to fill those spots. I mean, it is hard. And if you've got that little duo there as your co-QB2s, I'm okay with it. I'm not in love with it. It's a situation that I'm looking to improve, but I could live with it. Like I said, it's neither the worst nor the best. It's better than having Alex Smith, right? It's got to be. Alex Smith is so boring. Just ugh. It's like having LeGarrette Blount in your starting lineup. Just boring.
Yeah. He is consistent, though. I'll give him that. Consistently boring.
Consistently 11 points.
Yeah. I have him right 2 spots under Bradford. He's at my QB 25. But
that's fair. Anything's better than Orton.
It's good enough for me. But at least I didn't have to rely on Drew Stanton for my championship, even though I had to rely on him for one of my playoff games.
And I had terrible QBs for my championship game.
Andrew Luck and Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and they
weren't very good.
They scored a cumulative, I want to say, like 38 points in weeks 15 and 16 for me. Just absolutely shit the bed. But, man, I'm just going to wax ass next year in that league with my team.
Until the championship game when you lose to me again.
Yeah, that's how it'll go. Yeah, when I had to make your banner for that league, I was puking the whole time.
I love it. But that's going to wrap it up for us this week. You got any last parting shots for us, boss? All right. Well, we're finally going to let you guys go. And it's been a longer show tonight. Hope you guys stuck through it with us. Thank you guys for listening. We really do appreciate it. If you guys like what we do, give us feedback. Let us know how we can improve. Besides telling our dogs to stop barking so much. I know you guys love the sound of my beagle, but I'm sure he's awful distracting. But drop some feedback. If you like us, give us a rating on Twitter. And just, keep listening. This is it's been the Dynasty Playbook, the Dynasty Fantasy Football subreddit's dedicated podcast. I've been your host, Drew. You can find me on Reddit at EAF Marine and on Twitter at DrewDawsonNFL. With me have been my co-hosts, Tyler and Scott. So you can find Scott on Reddit at Stewie35, but you can't find him here with us in the chat right now. And you can find Tyler on Reddit at Barles and on Twitter at HBOM9508. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again next week.